Today, I'd like to talk about a 2D Sonic game that I hold very close to my heart. This game is a huge breath of fresh air, so unique in its visuals, soundtrack, and gameplay. In my opinion, it deserves all the love that it gets. What? No, get out of here. Today, I'm gonna be talking about my favorite 2D Sonic game, Sonic Rush. If you couldn't already tell, I'm pretty sick while filming this, but I kinda need to get this video out by the weekend, so I apologize, but you're gonna have to deal with my raspy voice for this video. Hope you enjoy! So, first things first, I'd like to talk about what's arguably the most important topic for a video game, the gameplay. As you may or may not know, Sonic Rush was the first Sonic game in the series to introduce the iconic boost formula, and if you ask me, Dimps freaking nailed the use of the boost formula here. The sense of speed that you get in this game is unlike any other 2D Sonic game. Honestly, I believe that this game did it best. The only game rivaling Rush's boost gameplay is Unleashed. Even then, there's something about Rush that makes it stand out. Oh yeah, this game wasn't even made by Sonic Team. It was made by the company Dimps. They've made other spin-off Sonic games like the Advanced Trilogy, Rush Adventure, Unleashed, Colors DS, Generations 3DS, and... you. I'm gonna be honest with you, I believe that this is where Dimps peaked. Not just when it comes to Sonic games, but in general. I think this is their best game to date, and I highly doubt that they'll be surpassing this masterpiece anytime soon. You don't only get to play as Sonic in this game, you also get to play as Blaze the Cat, which makes sense considering this is where she made her first appearance. She basically plays the same as Sonic, but fire, and she can hover for short distances, which can come in handy. Overall, Sonic and Blaze don't play too differently from each other, which I'm okay with since the gameplay is already extremely fun on its own. Another thing that helps elevate the gameplay is the trick system. Tricking in this game is not only satisfying, but it also refills your boost gauge. It's a great feature and the game gives you a reason to use it. Another thing that I love about the gameplay is the fact that this game isn't afraid to challenge you. Obviously, the start of this game is somewhat simple. You're not gonna run into too much challenge. But the further you go into the game, the more of a challenge it becomes. And I love that. This game screams replayability. In order to master these stages to get the best possible rank, you need to replay them. And this game handles that key feature so incredibly well. I want to get better at these levels. I want to replay them. This also ties into the time attack mode. Time attack is pretty self-explanatory. This game times you on whichever level you decide to play, and your goal is to get the fastest time possible. This is an amazing way to encourage replayability. This mode is also outside of the main story mode, so you're free to replay a specific level as many times as you want without any trouble. Just like the vast majority of 2D Sonic, this game also has special stages for you to play. Now, there isn't too much to talk about when it comes to the special stages, just know that I think that they control great. In order to get into a special stage, Sonic's levels will have these little objects scattered across the level that you can grab onto. It's also important to remember that you need to have enough boost to be able to get into the actual stage. Now, the design of these special stages are heavily inspired by Sonic 2's Half-Pipe, but what makes these special stages so much more fun in my opinion is the fact that you can use the DS's touchscreen to move Sonic. This makes the overall movement feels so much more tight compared to other special stages. You have a real sense of control here, and I love it. And yes, in order to get the true ending to this game, the Chaos Emeralds are mandatory. Don't worry though, these special stages are honestly quite easy to find, and you only have to get them in Sonic's part of the game. With Blaze, you get the Soul Emeralds automatically after defeating each zone's boss. Speaking of which, the bosses, while great, are undoubtedly the weakest part of the game for me. The bosses in this game follow the tradition of waiting for the opponent's attack to finish and hitting them when they're vulnerable. I still enjoy them though. It definitely takes some skill to get the boss's patterns down and being able to consistently hit them. The boss that stands out the most in my opinion though is the final boss. Here you play as Super Sonic and Burning Blaze, working together to take down the two doctors. With Sonic, your goal is to deflect the mech's attacks back at it. Seems pretty simple, but it's actually quite challenging at first. I often found myself missing my target quite a few times during my first playthrough, but once you make it past this section of the boss, you'll be switched to Blaze, and her section of the boss is much more manageable, only needing to shoot Blaze's fire attacks at the boss, which are definitely more consistent. Overall, it's definitely not my favorite final boss that the game has to offer, but it's still a solid note for the game to end on. Now, if I had to name a single flaw that this game had, it would have to do with its level design. Now, don't get me wrong, I freaking love the level design in this game. The only issue with it is something that Dimps has had a problem with since the beginning, the bottomless pits. There are a lot of bottomless pits in this game, and while I view them as an excuse to memorize and replay these levels to overcome them, I can genuinely see the frustration that fans have with this part of the level design, and to an extent, I can agree with them. There are definitely sections where Dimps will just go overboard with their bottomless pits, but once again, I can overlook these as simply another challenge to overcome. Overall though, I completely understand the problem that others have with them. Now, one of the many things that I believe makes Rush stand out is its visuals and aesthetic. Instead of using the 2D sprites like they did for the Advanced trilogy, Dimps decided to take advantage of the DS's hardware by using 3D models for the characters. And this may be the nostalgia talking, but I love Sonic's model in this game. There's so much charm to it, and the art style definitely helps bring it to life. Sonic also just has so much character in this game. As always, Jason Griffith's voice performance was stellar, and being able to hear these amazing voice lines through each level of the game really helps bring out the game's aesthetic. If I had to describe this game's aesthetic in a single word, it would be style. There is so much freaking style and I love it. Everything from the main menu to the level select to the gameplay, it's all amazing. Visually, this game is basically the adventure games put into 2D. Every level theme is just as visually stunning and unique as the other, and there's just so much wacky stuff going on in each of these levels. I just can't help but love it. Something that helps complement the visuals and aesthetic, and even the game as a whole, is the soundtrack, and boy, it does not disappoint. The main composer for the Rush soundtrack is none other than Hideki Naganuma, lead composer for Jet Set Radio. And honestly, Rush wouldn't be the same without this style of music. Take a game like Rush Adventure, for example. It's the sequel to Rush and overall a decent game, but one of the biggest misses that game has was Hideki. The soundtrack wasn't bad, of course, but compared to the first Rush game, it just wasn't it. The music was missing the style that was so incredibly made by Hideki. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Sonic Rush has one of the best soundtracks in the entire series. Hideki knows how to create bangers. I would be all for him returning to compose a soundtrack for a future Sonic game. Not that that's very likely, but hey, I can hope. If I haven't made it clear by now, I love Sonic Rush. It's my favorite 2D Sonic game and one of my favorite video games as a whole. And I know, the majority of this video was just me praising Sonic Rush. Shouldn't I be talking about its issues as well? Well, that's the thing. I barely have any issues with this game. It's my ideal 2D Sonic game and it's a blast all the way through. The story is pretty bare bones, I guess. The sound effects can often be very crunchy at points. And, it ends. I wish it didn't do that, but seriously, I'd say that this Sonic game is the most consistent in terms of quality. I'm not trying to sound biased or anything, but that's how I feel. The flaws of this game, if any, are minor, and it doesn't stop me from calling it a masterpiece. If you own any DS handheld, please try this game out. If it's not for you, then that's okay. Or if you don't feel like buying the game, you could use that one method that I will not be sharing in this video. Anyway, if you're new here, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And feel free to follow me on Twitter if you haven't already. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye, everyone.